terrified woman flees a dark house. One window glows against stormy midnight skies. Somewhere, someone is brooding. Between 1960 and 1974, thousands of these covers appeared on paperback racks as Gothic romances became the missing link between the Gothic literature of the 18th and 19th centuries and the paperback horror of the 70s and 80s. That was a section from Paperback Books from Hell, the Twisted History 70s and 80s horror fiction by Grady Hendrix. It is 254 pages of insanity, and I love it. Published by the QuickBooks Corporation. So what is the appeal of this book? Well, if you go, even if you've never read the book, if you just go on Grady Hendrix's website, you could tell that he is a man who loves horror and loves the history. He is the horror fan that you all know and love. If you want to know the tone of this book, here are a few of the section titles. Women running from houses. Welcome to Porn Country. Parenting the homicidal child. Salad of the damned. What to expect when you're expecting a hell baby. I read this book cover to cover immensely. I loved every minute of it. I loved his cheeky tone. I loved how thorough he was. I loved all the books he recommended. In fact, I kind of want to own every last book he listed. And even he admits that probably a bunch of them aren't even that good. A bunch of them are probably not even written by horror fans. A good chunk of them were written by either money grabbers or fearmongers. But we don't care. I want to see them. I want to read them. I want to own everything. In fact, I want to own, if nothing else, I want to own all the covers. Because all the covers he showcases are amazing. They are beautifully hand-painted, hand-drawn. They're creepy. They just suck you in, and I love it, every minute of it. A great example of just one that sticks out in my mind. It is so beautifully ridiculous that I gotta own it. I don't even know if this book is real. No. I know it's real. I don't know if this book is good, but I know I want to read it, and I know I want the cover. It is a book called The Kill Riff. And on the front, there's a dude who looks like Johnny Ramone with a red Stratocaster, but along the guitar neck, there is a double-barreled smoking shotgun. It is so ridiculous, but I want it. And I know you can't judge a book by its cover, but these covers work. It is a great history if you're a horror fan. If you want to find all these books, if you want to find where to start with horror reading, and if you just want to build a list, I say go for this book. And I want to check out Grady's other stuff. He's got a podcast about vampires. He's got other books. He's got a lot of great work here. And I know I'm supposed to be digging through this pile, but I might just be adding to the pile now because I just want everything in this book. And it all helps thanks to his writing, thanks to his loving writing. Also, in sections, he showcases the artists and the authors of most of the books. There's a section in the back where you can get little mini bio. If you just want a quick mini bio of Clive Barker or Shirley Jackson, it's there. And it's great. It is just beautiful. This is a book that I would say every horror fan should check out. Even if you're a horror fan from back in the day and you've read all these books and you know everything, hell, you might even already own these books, I say check this out. See if there's something new for you, or at least support a guy who's clearly doing good work for the horror crowd. Once again, that book is called Paperbacks from Hell, The Twisted History of 1970s and 80s Horror Fiction, made by Grady Hendrix, and it is published by QuickBooks. 5 out of 5, get it.
This one will drive you absolutely mad.
The riots began because the stores could not meet the demand of Sutter Kane's novel, In the Mouth of Madness.
Kane disappeared 2 months ago without a trace. You're the guy that writes horror books.
You can forget about Stephen King. Kane outsells them all. I need to know if he's alive or dead, and I need that book.
It's a setup. I just have to work out how it's set up.
Kane's writing has been known to have an effect on his readers.
See this? It's a map. This whole thing has been staged.
You just get out.
This is not reality.
It's all happening for real, Trent.
I know this book will drive people crazy.
Well, let's hope so. The movie comes out next month.
Yeah. In the Mouth of Madness. I've been wanting to see this for a while. I mean, if nothing else, how do you not love a title called In the Mouth of Madness? We got a film in John Carpenter's later career. I love it. Sam Neill is great. You know, the whole story is amazing. But it's also this interesting artifact of where we were in horror in the 90s. Because I don't know when this started, but this is a movie that kind of got a little meta, because the whole premise is that a guy is looking through the history of a horror writer. Turns out a good chunk of the world is real, and it's looking at our relationship between the author and, you know, the worlds that they give us. Now, it's not getting into the super meta territory that something like Scream would. That would come out a few years later. Although this did come out after Freddy's New Nightmare, which kind of treaded some of the same water, from what I understand. That's another movie I need to take out of the pile. But it's kind of interesting that we're starting to get into the going inward, self-referential world of film that we are kind of still in, and sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's a little tedious, but this is good. This is definitely good. I'd give it a 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 instantly. I really enjoyed this. Sam Neill is very good. John Carpenter is amazing. The writing is pretty good. And the twists and turns aren't bad. And the other thing that I noticed a lot of in this movie is that it's not only an interesting movie for where and when it takes place, you know, when it came out in the 90s, but also when it took place in the time of the Lovecraft fandom. Because this movie is very much, it's supposed to be a bit of a look at guys like Stephen King, I think maybe other horror writers, R.L. Stine and Anne Rice, you know, all those guys. But it's a fascinating look because the fake writer Sutter Kane is supposed to be the new version of H.P. Lovecraft, minus the fact that we don't. What I mean is, I don't know if this was a time when one of the big things about Lovecraft that was part of the discussion was his racism, his sexism, his paranoia about everything around him, the fact that he was popular pretty much later. He was popular after he died. And I don't know when that became part of the bigger Lovecraftian debate, where we just see this writer as this paranoid nut who we just imagine is just in this world. Because I have never seen an interpretation of Lovecraft. This is the first time I've seen an interpretation of Lovecraft where he is this power hungry and he is this, you know, super, I will work with the demons within me and become this amazing being. I think if we made this movie now, he would not be, and it was supposed to be a Lovecraft analog, he would not be this super powerful being who loves, to take over everything and whatnot. He's gonna be this guy, be this hermit who is this, just doesn't trust anybody and is paranoid that everybody around him is out to get him. So, it's a weird artifact, but it's amazing. It's pretty amazing. One of my favorite things in it is there's the set of this massive black church. And I don't know if this is a real church or not, but it's beautiful. It's great for a horror movie. Now, I know this is not a straightforward adaptation of Lovecraft story, and it's more about the mood of, impending forces beyond your control and extreme paranoia, and it gets that. The title is a play on The Mountains of Madness, which I still need to read. I got a big thing of Lovecraft I need to get into. Ultimately, I think when I was watching this movie, I found myself thinking, man, this is really good. I could totally see myself watching this again. And I love all the imagery. I love the story. The idea of, I'm going to prove that this isn't real, only to find out that it is. But I will admit, I like what we're doing with Lovecraft. I still need to finish Lovecraft Country, and I need to read the book it's based on. But I really like how that's handling things. And if we're going to talk about Lovecraft adaptations, I really think if we're going to do a remake or something else, or Shudder's going to make another TV show, I wouldn't mind they adapted this. I think this would benefit. This is one of the things that would benefit from that. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe we've had enough. But overall, it's pretty obvious. I give it a 4 out of 5. I don't know if pure Lovecraft fans are going to love it. I think they might. But personally, I just think it's great. I think it's one of the better things to come out of the 90s, and it's one of the better look inward at yourself horror fan movies that I've ever seen. And as always, it's John Carpenter in the early 90s. It's good. It's good. Go watch it. While this podcast is mainly to go through the things I already have, I also want to give credit to one of my favorite things, one of my favorite institutions that I do not use enough, and I don't think enough of us use enough. So I'm going to try and utilize them as well for this podcast. And that is, of course, your local library. And I'm going to be trying to not only decrease how much I buy and how much new material, because there's still stuff I want to read and consume, but I keep forgetting to utilize that resource. I mean, it's there. I live near about 3 libraries, and I have access to online streaming services that my library lets me get access to. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the audiobook version of A Course in High Magic, Evoking Divine Energy to Heal Your Past, Transcend Your Limitations, and Step into Your True Potential by Damien Echols. It was created in 2018. So just to give a little history of who Damien Echols is. If you're a heavy metal fan, you know who Damien Echols is. Or at least you know who he is, but you don't know him by name. Damien Echols was one of the West Memphis 3. Back in the 80s, there was a sweeping thing in our nation, partially due to the influence of Reaganomics, but also just an increase in extreme fundamental Christianity, extreme demand for some level of, I guess, normalcy amongst a number of people, especially in various states. And one of these states was Arkansas. So, which is where this happened, and there was this big rise in the belief that Satanism has a bigger influence on our world than it really does. Like you look at the QAnon thing that's going on right now, it's sort of like that, only without the internet. And This moment in history was called the Satanic Panic. We call it the Satanic Panic now. You should research that and look at all the things that people had destroyed because they believed that Satan was the big thing that was ruining everybody and had no real understanding of what real Satanism is. So, where Damien Echols lived, some children were brutally murdered. And people had this idea that they were murdered for a satanic ritual or something like it. And someone pointed to Damien Echols. He was a kid in the 80s with long hair and a Metallica shirt in an area that was very frowned upon. So clearly he's a Satanist. He's not. And he's a guy who has an interest in magic. He's reading, some histories of rituals at his local library. And that's enough for him to be sent to court and have the court manipulate everything so it looks like they caught a satanic child murderer. Him and 2 other people. Yeah, it was him and Jesse Miskelly Jr. and Jason Baldwin. Years later, they sort of got released. It took over 20 years, and basically they got an Alford plea, which was basically, you can maintain your innocence, but we're going to keep the guilty plea so we don't get sued by you, which I think is bullshit. And in the book, yeah, I'm going to call the audiobook a book because it's a book. He talks about a little bit of that and why he took it, and it was obvious he just wanted to get out of jail. 20 years in solitary confinement does not do any good for you. And I want to be supportive because I will admit I knew about the West Memphis 3. I talked about them, but I would forget their names. I think at times we forget that people who are involved in these major events, they have lives beyond us. And I will admit I didn't think about what he or the other guys are doing. I still don't know what the other guys are doing until I caught Pelton Ward and Duncan Russell's The Midnight Gospel, and he's in the 3rd episode as the fish man who is talking about magic. And I was like, wow, this guy's pretty interesting. That's also how I found out about Duncan Russell, and I've been checking out his podcast, maybe looking for tips. I checked out Damien Echols, and he has been a teacher and a practicing ceremonial magician and Zen teacher, just about his whole life. Like, it's how he dealt with being in solitary confinement, and I think it's great. And I think that's interesting because, you never hear about that. And I found out he owns a YouTube channel. I checked that out. It's pretty interesting. And it leads to another thing about me, which is I'm a practicing atheist. I don't really believe that there's an afterlife. I don't really believe that there is anything beyond what the material world has given us and everything. But I do have an interest in religion. I have a bit of I'm very critical of religion, but I will admit I don't know everything. And one religion I've had some interest in learning more about is, Wicca. I've had an interest in learning about magic and the way that people practice it. And I had an interest, in Zen to deal with other things that I've been dealing with throughout my life. So I found him to be very fascinating. And once I found out that I can check out his books on Hoopla, which is the streaming service I'm using from my local library, I checked out this book, and it's very well spoken. And it's probably something I'm going to have to purchase in a few years because there's a lot of exercise and ritual. It's going to require a lot of reusing, reviewing, re-listening by me to really get into it. And I've worked on some of the breathing that he has given and some of the ways he handles magic. I don't know if I get the same results that he's going to get, but I am more receptive to learn this than a lot of other things. And I think if you're into magic, and I think you should check out Damien Echols' work as well. I want to check out more of his books. I plan to do so, and I'm rooting for him. I hope he does well. I hope he does better. I hope he spends his life promoting as much good as he can. Oh, as a side note, anybody wondering, yes, he does talk about what happened, and he talks about what it was like for him in prison. That's in the first part of the book. But it's more than that. It's more of an instructional book on how he does ritual and why he does it. And it's interesting. Is it something that I would recommend to somebody who completely disowns magic? Not quite. Maybe as a moment of understanding. Is he the best teacher of magic? I don't know. He's the one I am using right now. I work under the philosophy that I don't want one master of something. I want multiple teachers. Multiple teachers who are continuing to learn. And I think that's what he is. That's what he is, and that's what I hope to be. And solid. Now, if you think there are better books, or you have your own thoughts on Damien Echols, leave them in the comments. Let me know. No, so I can keep building and building and building and understanding. Again, that book is A Course in High Magic, Invoking Divine Energy to Heal Your Past, Transcend Your Limitations, and Step into Your True Potential by Damien Echols, published by Sounds True. And I was able to get this off Hoopla. I'm sure you can get it through other places. If nothing else, check out his website. Alright, the final book for tonight, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Wicca and Witchcraft. Learn to walk the magical path with the god and goddess. So I do have an interest in Wicca, so I just went for something incredibly bare bones, because why not? I forget what edition this is. It's probably not the newest edition, but I will say I did think I got a lot out of it. It talks about a lot of things. It talks about history, it talks about various rituals, signs, what signs mean, different types of magic, including puppets, not magic, the candle magic, different herbs and different uses. And like I said, I don't know how literal, I don't really think this stuff is literally true. I don't think, but it is interesting to read and find other uses for, and it's an interesting world that I am interested in, that I would like to know more about. I read mixed feelings about this book. A lot of people like it, and there are some people that have problems with the way stuff is presented, and it's not, the Christian saying, like, this is a book of lies, only Jesus is the real truth. That's not it. It's other pagans. And my impression through this book, it seems like Wicca does have a bit more fluidity than a lot of other religions do. It could even involve other religions, but there is a very set thing of ritual. I like the sense of freedom, but also the sincere sense of responsibility. The writers, Denise, Zimmermann, and Katherine and Gleason, they really emphasize a certain level of responsibility when taking on these tasks. The idea of being careful and knowing what you want to do with a spell, I think, is at least a good sentiment, and at least something to always encourage in anything, even if it's not strictly spell work. Techniques such as how people write spells, like how a lot of them use rhyming and understanding what words they use, I think is a very, very good way to start. They say very bluntly, this is not a book for people who just want to piss off their parents. This is about people who want to know. And in my opinion, I wanted a good start to understanding Wicca, and I think this was a great start. I say this is a very good start. As an interest, I don't know if this is a book I would purchase at full price. I think this is more of if I found it, like I said, in the library, or if I found it, through Hoopla, or I found it. It's a good reference book, but it's it's written like a tech manual to a degree. But if you can get one used, or get like a digital copy, I recommend it. If you're way more into Wicca and witchcraft and you already know, you might not read this book. You might get angry at the simplistic nature of it, but you gotta remember, that's a beginner's guide. So anybody who's practicing Wicca or witchcraft and you think I should read something else, give me some titles. The main focus is to go through all the stuff that I have, but I'm always open to adding new and finding new information, because the bigger thing is knowing more. But be aware, if you recommend a book, if you recommend a movie, if you recommend anything to me and I review it, get ready for me to rip it apart or for me not to understand. Again, this book is The Complete Idiot's Guide to Wicca and Witchcraft by Katherine and Gleason and Denise Zimmermann, published by Alpha, and it is 384 pages. All right, listeners, we thank you for your time. That is the last book. I thank you for anybody who is willing to listen. I hope I captured your interest in anything that I've read. If any of you have any interest, you'll at one point like, subscribe, share, and recommend stuff. Let's add more. Let's figure out what we need to put out there. Hope everyone has a good year. If you need to take your medication, don't forget to take your medication. I need to remember to take mine. And as always, I'm the Raven's Eye, and I'll see you all next time.